All right, let's dive into this study about science and religion.
It's a fascinating one.
Yeah, we've got the article itself from SciPost and,
And some Reddit comments, too.
yeah, some reactions to it on a Reddit thread, always fun.
Always fun.
So we can, kind of get a sense of what people are thinking about this.
Yeah.
And our goal is to really unpack what it tells us about how people see,
It's really interesting.
how people see these two worlds,
So one of the things that they found was that people with strong religious beliefs
Okay.
tend to see science and religion as compatible.
Which, I mean, makes sense.
You would think so,
Don't
right?
think so, yeah.
Like you can have your faith and still appreciate the cool stuff science finds out.
Totally.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
The study also found that those who strongly believe in science are more likely to see conflict.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost like they're more strict about keeping those two things separate.
Huh. That's interesting. You'd think it'd be the other way around.
Right, exactly. It's kind of paradoxical.
Yeah.
And to make it even more complex,
Okay.
stronger religious belief is actually linked to weaker belief in science.
Oh, wow.
So that adds another layer to it, right?
Yeah, so how can you see them as compatible but not like fully buy into the science side?
That's the big question, yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of possible explanations, but first let's talk about how the researchers set this study up.
Okay.
So they chose participants from the UK, the Netherlands, and Kazakhstan.
Interesting mix.
Yeah, and they picked these countries specifically because they represent different levels of religiosity in society.
Oh, okay.
So they wanted to see if that played a role,
I see.
like if it was different across different cultures.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And importantly, they measured belief in science and religion totally separately.
Okay, so it was
Kind of a leading question.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't leading them to choose one or the other.
Got it.
It was more about seeing how they viewed each one independently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Got it.
so what did the Redditors have to say about all this?
Oh, it was a whole mix of opinions, which you would expect.
Of course.
But right off the bat, there was this whole debate about whether belief is even the right word when you're talking about science.
Right.
It's not like...
Not like believing in ghosts or something.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like science is about, proof and experiments.
Yeah, it's a process for finding truth,
Right.
not just a bunch of facts you take on faith.
Yeah. Someone even said it's a verb, not a noun.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
That science is a verb.
Yeah,
Not a noun.
for sure.
Okay.
But, of course, there were some jokes, too, like always on Reddit.
Oh, yeah, there has to be.
Right. It's like someone said science believes in you, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, classic.
But back to the serious stuff, I noticed a lot of people were talking about trust.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which makes sense, especially if you're not someone who's like deep in science every day.
Right, like you're not reading all the journals and stuff.
Exactly. So you have to rely on scientists and, people who communicate about science to explain things in a way that...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and to do it honestly, without any agendas.
To do it honestly.
Yeah,
And if that trust is broken, then people are less likely to believe it,
totally.
even if it's true.
Even if the evidence is there,
Yeah.
it becomes more about who's telling you than what they're saying.
Right, so belief in science isn't just about the science itself.
Yeah, it's about the whole system.
It's about who you trust
Exactly.
and their motivations and all that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that ties into all these big debates we see, like climate change,
Right.
vaccines, all that.
Yeah, where the science might be clear, but
Yeah.
people are still arguing about it.
Because they're bringing their own beliefs and their own trusted sources to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do these Reddit reactions, how do they kind of tie back into
Right.
the actual findings of the study?
Well, I think they offer some good context.
So,
Remember how the study found a stronger link between believing in science
right.
and seeing conflict
Yeah.
in more secular countries?
Yeah, that was a little surprising.
Yeah.
I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
Yeah, you'd think it would be the other way around.
But the Reddit comments actually kind of back that up.
Yeah,
Okay.
because some people were saying that in places where religion isn't as central,
Yeah.
science might hold a more dominant position.
So it's like the main source of truth for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So if religion challenges that, it's seen as a bigger threat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Whereas in more religious societies,
Yeah.
people might be more used to integrating different belief systems.
It's just part of their worldview.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they see science and religion as different, but not necessarily conflicting.
So it's not that science replaces religion, but it exists alongside it.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about this link between strong religious beliefs
Right.
and weaker belief in science,
Right.
even when they're seen as compatible.
All right, yeah.
I mean, that still seems a little
It is.
counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
So there are a few possibilities here.
Okay, let's see.
One is that if someone already has a strong faith-based understanding of the world,
Yeah.
they might not feel as much of a need to seek out scientific explanations.
Because their faith already gives them the answers.
Exactly.
Okay.
They might still find science interesting,
Yeah.
maybe even useful, but it's not essential to their worldview.
Okay, so it's not that they reject science, but it's just not as important to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Another possibility is that some religious teachings might directly contradict scientific findings,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
which creates this cognitive dissonance.
Right, like your brain is trying to hold on to two things.
Right, you've got two conflicting pieces of information, and you have to decide which one wins out.
And which one to prioritize, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And this isn't always a conscious choice, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times it's an unconscious process.
So your brain is just doing it.
Yeah, it's doing it to try to reduce that internal conflict.
Interesting.
So in those cases, someone might downplay the science to protect their religious beliefs.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like picking a team even though you see both sides.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these findings, these interesting debates on Reddit,
Right.
some possible explanations.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean?
Yeah.
Like for the average person listening, why should they care about any of this?
Well, I think it can help you have better conversations about science and religion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it reminds you that everyone comes to this with different perspectives.
Right.
So you can't go into a conversation assuming everyone sees it the same way you do,
Right.
because that's just going to lead to arguments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead, try approaching it with curiosity and a willingness to really understand where the other person is coming from,
Okay.
even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah, even if you disagree,
Yeah.
be open to
That's a
different
great way of seeing things.
ways of seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And you might find some common ground,
Yeah.
or at least have a more respectful conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being aware of these different perspectives
Yeah.
can make me a better communicator.
Definitely.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Can it also help us understand these
I think so.
bigger societal debates, like you mentioned, the
Yeah.
climate change,
Yeah.
the...
Think about things like genetic engineering.
Oh, yeah.
These are topics that have scientific evidence, but also ethical considerations,
Yeah,
which often come from people's values.
right.
And those values can be shaped by religion.
Yeah,
So if we can understand how people view science and religion,
yeah,
we can better understand why they have the opinions they do
that's true.
about these big issues.
And maybe find some common ground there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it all comes back to recognizing that,
Yeah,
people are filtering information through their own beliefs and experiences.
okay, yeah.
And that shapes how they see the world.
Kind of how they understand facts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to this contradiction.
Right.
You mentioned earlier about the link between, strong religious belief and weaker belief in science.
Right.
Even when they see them as compatible.
Yeah.
Does that mean, like, one cancels out the other?
Well, it's interesting.
Or, like, if you're already getting your big questions answered by religion,
Right.
maybe the details of science don't seem as important.
That's a really sharp observation.
Okay.
And it's actually something the study authors bring up themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they suggest that maybe having two sources of meaning,
Okay.
like science and religion,
Yeah.
could make each one feel less important.
Oh, interesting.
Almost like having a backup system.
Right, like if you've got one,
Yeah.
you don't need to worry about the other one so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, for example, if your faith already tells you the universe has a purpose,
Yeah.
maybe you don't feel as much urgency to understand exactly how it all began.
Right, okay.
So it's not that science becomes irrelevant,
Yeah.
but it might occupy a different space in your worldview.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not about conflict, but about relative importance.
Exactly.
Okay, so that leads to a really interesting question then.
Yeah.
Could prioritizing compatibility
Right.
actually make you less engaged with either science or religion?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the complexity of this whole relationship.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
And it probably varies depending on the person
Yeah.
and their beliefs and values.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, is there a sweet spot
Right.
where you can appreciate both without diminishing either one.
Exactly. That's what we need to figure out.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been really insightful.
It has, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's not just about
Yeah.
these abstract ideas of science and religion, but how they actually play out
In the real world.
in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how it affects people's lives.
Exactly. How it shapes how we think and make decisions.
That's really cool.
It is.
So we're all complex beings.
We are.
And we see the world in different ways.
Yeah. And I think that's something to celebrate.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our dive,
Right.
I want to go back to that interesting contradiction,
Right.
the link between strong religious belief
Right.
and weaker belief in science.
Yeah.
Despite seeing them as compatible,
Yeah.
does that mean one cancels out the other?
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Like, if you're already getting your big picture answers from religion, maybe the nitty-gritty of science seems less crucial.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thought, and it's something the study authors actually bring up.
Oh, wow.
They suggest that having these two different sources of meaning,
Like science and religion,
yeah,
might actually make each one feel a little less important individually.
interesting.
Almost like, if you have a backup system,
Right.
it takes some of the pressure off.
You don't need to worry about the primary one as much.
Exactly.
That's
So,
it.
if your faith already tells you the universe has a purpose,
Yeah.
maybe the specifics of how it all began scientifically
Yeah.
feel less pressing.
Less urgent.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not that science becomes irrelevant, but it might just occupy a different spot
Right.
in your overall worldview.
So it's not necessarily about conflict, but about
Yeah.
how important each one is.
Relative importance.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that brings up another question, right?
Yeah.
Could focusing on compatibility sometimes come at the cost of deeper engagement
Oh, interesting.
with either science or religion?
That's a good point.
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have all the answers, but this study definitely raises some fascinating questions.
It does, and it makes you think.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does make you think about how we approach these big topics.
Yeah, and how our own beliefs shape our understanding.
Exactly.
Okay, well, before we move on to the next part of our dive,
Right.
Anything from this discussion that really stuck with you?
You know, what really stood out to me is how important it is to recognize our own biases.
Yeah, I think that came up a lot in the Reddit comments, too.
It did, and it's something we all need to be more aware of,
Yeah.
whether we're talking about science, religion, or anything else.
Right. Anything.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own perspective
Yeah.
and think that our way of seeing things is the right way,
And especially with something like this.
especially with beliefs.
Yeah, where it's so personal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we end up filtering information through our existing worldview,
Right. Even if we don't realize it.
even without realizing it, yeah.
Right.
And that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings and conflicts.
Yeah, and miss opportunities to actually learn something new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the key takeaway for me is to be more aware of those filters,
Okay.
to question our own assumptions,
Yeah.
and be open to different perspectives.
Yeah, different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly.
Good advice.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's especially important these days, with everything so polarized.
Right. Yeah, it feels like everyone's just digging in their heels.
Exactly.
And not really listening to each other.
Yeah, and that's not helpful.
No.
We need to be more open to dialogue and understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I think that's a great place to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
I agree.
We've explored this fascinating study, debated with the Reddit community,
Yeah.
and really gotten into some surprising insights about science and religion.
Yeah, and hopefully challenge ourselves to think a little deeper about our own beliefs.
Yeah, which is what it's all about. So, we're going to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay?
If seeking compatibility between science and religion can actually make each one seem less important,
Right.
does that mean that a little bit of productive tension is actually beneficial?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like, does challenging our beliefs actually lead to a more nuanced,
Lots of the robust understanding.
understanding of the world?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
It's something for you to mull over.
For sure.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those minds open.
And as always, keep asking those tough questions.
That's what makes it interesting. As we're exploring this idea of compatibility,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder if there's a difference between seeing science and religion as compatible
Right.
versus seeing them as integrated.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, is there a difference there?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Like compatibility is more passive.
Okay.
It's like they both exist, and that's fine.
Right. They can coexist.
Yeah, but integration is more about actively trying to weave them together.
Okay, to find connections.
Yeah, to create a unified worldview.
Okay, interesting.
And I think this study might actually be hinting at this difference.
How so?
Remember how people with strong religious beliefs were more likely to see compatibility?
Yeah.
But they were also less likely to fully embrace the science.
Right, okay.
So maybe for some folks, compatibility is more about compartmentalizing.
Keeping them separate.
Yeah, like in separate boxes so they don't clash.
So they don't have to deal with the conflict.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a way to avoid conflict, but it might also prevent a deeper understanding.
Because you're not really wrestling with the hard questions.
Yeah, you're not engaging with the nuances of either one.
Right. You're just saying they both exist.
Yeah, live and let live kind of thing.
But integration, that requires you to actually deal with those nuances.
Yeah.
Even when it's difficult.
Yeah, it's about finding ways to make both science and religion make sense.
In your own life.
Yeah, in your own personal experience.
Okay, so it's a more personal thing.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, so I'm also wondering how this plays out in different areas of life.
Right.
Like, does it affect how people approach healthcare or technology?
That's a great question, and there's definitely research on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some studies show that people who integrate science and religion
Okay.
might be more open to certain medical treatments.
Even if those treatments kind of clash with their religious beliefs?
Yeah, because they're able to weigh the scientific evidence alongside their faith.
That's interesting.
It suggests that integration can lead to more nuanced decision-making.
So it's not about blindly following one or the other.
Right, it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, finding what works for you.
Exactly.
You know, this whole thing reminds me of the debate about teaching evolution in schools.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's always framed as this battle between science and religion.
Right, like it's either...
Yeah, but as we've seen, it's not that simple.
Not at all.
There are people who see evolution and their faith as totally compatible.
Absolutely.
And there are people who really struggle with it.
And understanding those different perspectives is so important.
Yeah. If we want to have any kind of productive conversation.
Exactly. It's not about converting anyone.
Right.
Or proving who's right.
It's about respecting those differences.
Yeah. And finding common ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that keeps coming up for me
Yeah.
is this idea of curiosity.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
like how curious we are about the world
Okay.
and about different ways of understanding it.
I like that.
It seems like a lot of this comes back to curiosity.
You might be right.
Okay.
Curiosity is definitely important for both science and religion.
Yeah, like in science, it's what drives us to ask questions.
To explore.
It's experiment.
Keep learning.
And in religion,
Yeah.
it's what drives us to seek meaning.
To connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, to explore those big questions.
Exactly.
So maybe it's not about choosing between science and religion,
Right.
but about embracing that curiosity.
Embracing that desire to learn and understand.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that there's always more to discover,
Absolutely.
no matter what you believe.
You know, this conversation has really shown me the value of bringing different perspectives together.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got this study, the Reddit discussions, our own thoughts here.
And it all adds up to a richer understanding.
Yeah, of this complex relationship between science and religion.
Exactly.
Speaking of those Reddit discussions, there was one comment that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
Someone said that science is about figuring out how the universe works,
Okay.
and religion is about figuring out what it all means.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it really struck me.
Yeah, it's like they're both trying to answer big questions,
Yeah.
but from different angles.
And maybe those different angles can actually complement each other.
Right, like looking at a puzzle from different sides.
Yeah, you get a more complete picture.
Exactly.
I think it's important to remember that these aren't just abstract ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
They have real-world consequences.
They shape how we live,
Right. Our choices, our relationships.
how we see the world.
Yeah, how we understand everything.
Exactly.
And they influence how we approach big challenges, too.
For sure, like climate change, social justice, all of that.
Technology, yeah.
Those are issues that need both scientific knowledge and ethical consideration.
Right.
And those ethical considerations often come from our values.
Which can be shaped by religion.
Exactly.
So it's not just about individual beliefs.
It's about how those beliefs affect our decisions.
Our actions.
Yeah, as a society.
And how we can navigate those differences to build a better future.
That's a big challenge.
It is.
But I think conversations like this are a good start.
Yeah, the more we talk about it,
The more we can learn.
and find common ground.
Exactly.
And maybe even discover some new things about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the world around us.
You never know what you might find.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. It really has.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's so complex.
Yeah.
We've uncovered some interesting findings, thought about some tough questions.
We'll spark some new ideas.
And yeah, hopefully got people thinking about their own beliefs.
That's what we hope for.
So we encourage you to keep exploring these topics.
Yeah, read more, talk to people, challenge your own assumptions.
You know, because like we learned today, the journey of understanding is often more rewarding than actually finding the answer.
That's so true.
So until next time, keep those minds open.
And keep diving deep.
And who knows, maybe your own exploration will lead to even more fascinating insights.
I hope so.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, until next time.
See you then.
It strikes me that this whole conversation about science and religion,
Yeah.
it often gets boiled down to this simple clash between faith and reason.
Right, like it's this battle.
Yeah, like they're at war.
Two opposite forces.
But what we've seen today is it's way more complicated than that.
It's not a battle at all. It's more like a dance.
A dance.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Like sometimes they're in sync, moving smoothly together.
Okay, like when science inspires awe.
Exactly, and that strengthens someone's faith.
Right. Okay.
And then other times, they might step on each other's toes a bit.
Like when science challenges beliefs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even in those moments, there's a chance to learn and grow.
If you're open to it.
Right, if you can embrace the complexity.
Yeah, it's not about making them fit perfectly.
No, it's about recognizing that they both have something to offer.
Right, and seeing how they can work together.
Yeah, how they can inform and enrich each other.
One of the biggest takeaways for me is this idea of humility.
Humility, yeah.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely.
And being willing to learn from other people.
Especially people who see things differently.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, humility is so important when you're talking about something this complex.
Because it's easy to think we have it all figured out.
So easy.
But really, we're all just learning as we go.
Always learning.
And the more humble we are, the more open we are to new ideas.
And that leads to a better understanding of the world.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a journey.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into science and religion.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's given you something to think about. Maybe even spark some conversations.
With your friends, your family.
And remember, the exploration doesn't have to end here.
Keep learning.
Keep asking questions, keep challenging your assumptions.
Keep diving deep.
Because the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
And that's the beauty of it.
Until next time, keep those minds open and keep seeking knowledge.
And keep dancing, even when you step on each other's toes.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, take care.
See you next time.